Hey everyone, this is Tony Reeves. If you like my content or have any suggestions, please let me know, and by all means, make sure you share. The only way I can get my word out is you help me get the word out as well.
I'm pretty sure if you looked across the board, there is a certain similarity with regards to various states in terms of what they can and they can't do. But it's fascinating because, like for instance, I found out that when you move to like a state like Delaware, there's tenants' rights. Like a lot of states have what's called tenants' rights, and I think one of the things that the Delaware you have to do is they have to actually provide you a copy of your rights, so this way you know what your rights are. I don't know about every state, but I'm pretty confident there's probably states that don't have that same thing. So you may find if you're in a state where they don't have tenants' rights, or they don't have a duty to inform you of tenants' rights, you may not know what you have a right under the law. Um, there's another thing in terms, and I'm talking about evictions standpoint first. There's a thing called self-help, meaning meaning that some states you can't, the landlord just can't decide, okay, you got to go. I'm gonna change the locks so that since you ain't paying your rents. That's called self-help. What they've effectively done is they've said, I'm going to help myself by taking care of the fact that you ain't paying the rent. But they usually, what ends up happening in most of those self-help situations is they haven't gone through the official proceeding. They haven't officially evicted you. They just said you ain't paid, so they figure I'm gonna just change the locks. No, player. Depending, some states don't let you do that. You get yourself in all kind of trouble if you do that. So you have to, they literally, you have to go through the eviction process where you go, they file an eviction to sue you, you go to court, you have to defend yourself, and then basically the court says you got to be out by this time, and sheriff comes knocking on the door and say, okay, come on, let's go, get your stuff and let's ride. And foreclosures is a little different because in foreclosures, it's another thing where it's state to state. Where some states, like I can tell you in Florida, there was a big thing when we had the housing market crash around 2007, if I believe. At that time, there were a lot of, you figure there was a lot of homes. That was when the housing bubble burst. And so what happened was, what states did was, you saw a lot of different banks accelerating the loans. What do you mean by accelerating? Well, it's a nice way of saying, since you ain't paid your mortgage in the last 2 to 3 months, we want the entire thing right now. If you can't pay the entire thing right now, we're going to take the house back. Now think about that. Imagine you're paying for a house that's $200,000 and you've been paying like $1,400 a month, and all of a sudden you've only been paying for it for a few years. You haven't really seriously did it into that 200,000. Then out of nowhere they're telling you we want all 200 and something thousand of that dollars right now. Please, I'm gonna be the first to tell you. I don't know about you. I don't know how funny your money is, but I ain't rolling deep pockets like that. So what ends up happening is, and this is not for every state, and this is not for every bank, but there were some banks that were very aggressive about saying, give us our money right now, we're going to take the home. Now remember, foreclosure, like an eviction, is a legal process. So you have to go through the court. The court has to make a finding, a judgment where they've said, yes, you have breached your contract. The only thing that's equitable in this particular instance is for the bank to get their property back. Plain and simple. Now in Florida did this thing where they basically told the banks, the only way you can do this is you have to mediate with the person first. And that means that during the process, you have to sit down to see if it's at all possible you can keep them in the home. Now let's be clear. Banks really don't want to be property owners. They want money. So they want you to pay them. So what ends up happening is in Florida, you have a situation where you go through the foreclosure procedure, you have to work with the bank for a mediation. If it doesn't work out then it's pretty much straightforward. They can come and snatch your place. And like I said, I would talk to an attorney if you're going through this in Florida to see if the law has changed, because I don't know if it's changed since the last time I've done it. But the thing is fascinating is that most people when it comes to foreclosure, they don't realize there's two aspects of it. There is the internal portion for the bank, and then there's the external foreclosure proceeding. So depending on your bank, this is how it sometimes goes down. So all of a sudden, you've missed 3 months. You've gone over 90 days in terms of your last pay. And then what they do is they say, we don't want no more of your money because you ain't paying us on time. So we're going to switch it to our internal foreclosure division. And what that division will do is they'll start evaluating your circumstances, and depending on the bank, they may reach out to you and say, okay, let's see if we can modify your circumstances. Do you qualify for one of our internal programs? And so then they run things like your credit, they run things like your work, they look at your finances, they want you to provide them all kind of documentation in terms of how much money you're making per month, what are your expenses, so they can decide whether or not you're one of those ones who fall into those unique circumstances where they can utilize and put you into their programs. So now, you're in this particular situation where once they have gone through this, if they've made the determination that you don't fit neatly into one of their programs, then they boot it to their foreclosure collections portion, who then initiates foreclosure proceedings. And then whatever the guidelines of the state, that is what's going to dictate at that particular point. Now, the interesting thing about the foreclosure proceedings from a standpoint is that evictions are typically quicker. A foreclosure can take a long period of time. And long really depends on the aggressiveness of the bank or aggressiveness of the holder of the mortgage. They don't have to go through everything I just described. They could make a decision that they're going to make this thing do what it do and make you right out quickly. But the bank that I was dealing with, I dealt with a couple of different banks who had that attitude. We want to keep you in the property if at all possible. I even had a lender tell me, listen, there are so many people who are struggling right now. We don't want to be holding all these properties and taking them for a loss. If you're already in the property, we want you to start paying. And that is where their main emphasis comes. But the problem is, if you are not one of those persons who fall into those circumstances, or even if you are from a financial standpoint, but your money is so funny because you don't know when you're going to get paid, you don't know how much you're going to get paid, you don't know when you're going to get another job, you don't know when the health circumstances are going to improve, you may find yourself in a situation where you're having to leave. And then that's when the devastating aftermath occurs.